Week 5 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few plays I'll combine trade for this week. The first player, Derrick Henry of the Baltimore Ravens. And so far this season, besides one monster game for Henry week 1 at Buffalo, the numbers haven't been there. Fumbles have been an issue. And also there's games where Baltimore was trailing, and obviously he's not much of a receiver at all anymore, where Justice Hill has that third down and passing downs role. So the last few games for Henry, week 2 versus Cleveland, he was bottled up, 11 carries, 23 yards. Week 3 versus the Lions, 12 carries, 50 yards, a touchdown, a catch, 7 yards, a fumble loss in that one. In week 4 at Kansas City, 8 carries, 42 yards, 2 catches, 16 yards. So that game was a blowout. Opportunities in the second half weren't there. I think week 5 he could get back on track versus Houston. But like I said, the last 3 weeks have been pedestrian for Derrick Henry and down numbers. So right now, while he's in a 3-week rut and slump is Derrick Henry, it's a perfect time for fantasy owners to go out there and get him, because like I said, I still think he has something left. Even though he did lose a step in this offense, he's still going to get his touchdowns as Henry, especially within the 10-yard line. And he's still a running back that it just takes a couple broken tackles for him to have a big play and a big day. Next player, Brock Bowers of the Vegas Raiders. Brock Bowers, we know, is not 100%. Hurting that knee in week 1, playing with a bulky brace, and that's definitely holding him back. And also, Geno Smith's not playing good football, and I think the rapport isn't there between the two guys. So the last 3 weeks, he's failed to reach double-digit fantasy points in PPR leagues. Week 2 versus the Chargers, 5 catches, 38 yards. Week 3 at the Commanders, 4 catches, 38 yards, a 2-point conversion. And then week 4 versus the Bears, 5 catches, 46 yards on 6 targets. So week 5 in Indianapolis, we know the Colts put points on the board, and we know if this Raider team wants to keep up, their best bet, in my opinion, even though he's not 100%, is still feed Brock Bowers and Ashton Ginty as your top 2 guys in your offense. Ginty finally had the breakout game last week with 3 touchdowns versus the Chicago Bears, but Brock Bowers has to get back on track, and hopefully that knee's healing very slowly while he's still playing on it, is Brock Bowers. So right now, while he's struggling, and last season he was easily the best tight end in fantasy football, he's a buy low option this week. Next player, A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles. So the first 3 out of 4 weeks, it's been horrible for A.J. Brown, where he's had 7 or less fantasy points already 3 times, and twice less than 3 fantasy points in PPR leagues. Week 2 with Kansas City, 5 for 27. Week 3 versus the Rams, 6 for 109, a touchdown. And then week 4, Tampa Bay, 2 catches, 7 yards, but he did have 9 targets. A lot of overthrows and just not in the right vicinity. So A.J. Brown, we know he's a great player. He's definitely not washed. We saw him make some monster plays in week 3 in the comeback victory versus the Rams. But the thing is, this Philadelphia Eagle team, if they go up early, they're not going to throw the football a whole lot. Where I believe in the second half, they didn't even have a completion in that ball game, where it's a lot of running, and Jalen Hurts, we know, is a run-first quarterback most time. And when you got one of the best, if not the best running back in all the league in Saquon Barkley, you're just going to keep running the football. And Philadelphia has a dominant offensive line as well. So right now, with Brown, besides the one big ball game where they had no choice but to throw themselves back into it was Philadelphia, where he really hasn't done much, you definitely could get him cheap, where he was a second-round pick in most fantasy drafts. Next player, Ted McMillan, the Carolina Panthers. So Ted, I think he's been decent so far in his rookie season. And obviously his quarterback's Bryce Young, and he just hasn't been that good in the first few seasons we've seen him in the NFL. So McMillan, the last few weeks, week 2 with Arizona, 6 catches, 100 yards, 10 targets. Week 3 versus Atlanta, 3 catches, 48 yards. And week 4 at the Patriots, 4 catches, 62 yards on 8 targets. So week 5, a good matchup coming up. Miami coming to town here versus Carolina Panther team. And like I said, there's no one on this offense pretty much. Now Tommy Trimble, he's the tight end. I know he found the end zone. He's not going to be a consistent target. Legette's been banged up, and he hasn't done much anyway when he played. Hunter Renfrow had the one big game. Jalen Coker possibly could return in a week or 2, but there's no one in this offense to throw to, and it's pretty much McMillan and Chuba Hubbard. So I know it's not a great offense, but volume's going to be there, and opportunity's going to be there. And like I said, McMillan, the first 3 out of 4 games of his NFL career, has still had double-digit fantasy days. Next player is teammate Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers. So Chuba Hubbard, I know if they're going to be trailing in games, obviously his workload's going to go down drastically, and Rico Dottle even got some looks in the blowout loss at New England last week. So the last couple weeks for Chuba Hubbard, numbers definitely dropped. Week 2 at Arizona, he had a nice game, 10 for 38, 5 catches, 39 yards of receiving touchdown. Week 3 versus the Falcons, 17 for 73, 2 catches, 3 yards. And then week 4, New England, like I said, the blowout game, 10 for 49, which was still 4.9 yards a carry and 3 catches for 20 yards. So week 5, a good matchup versus Miami. And a lot of people, like I said, they're not happy with guys on Carolina because they're in a bad offense and I don't think points are going to be there week in and week out. But if you're trailing early and often and there's not much going on besides Hubbard and McMillan, he's going to work his way into volume and work his way into points. So right now with 2 down games for Chuba Hubbard under double-digit fantasy points in PPR leagues, I think he's a solid buy this week. The next player, Jamar Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, we knew Jamar Chase was going to take a hit with Joe Burrow out of the lineup. I didn't think this much of a hit he was going to take this quick. So Jamar Chase, week 2 had the monster game, 14 catches, 165 yards, a touchdown, 16 targets. I know Burrow started that game, but Browning was in the majority of that one. Then week 3 in Minnesota, carry 9 yards, 5 catches, 50 yards, a fumble loss. And then week 4, tough matchup, obviously, with Patrick Surtain on a majority of the game. One of the best, if not the best corner in the league. 5 for 23 on 8 targets. So the targets are there. Chase, we know, is frustrated. Went up to the head coach. He wanted more targets, obviously, and said he was open on a 3rd down play. In this offense, their best way to score is to go through Jamar Chase. And now over the last 2 weeks and the 2 starts from Browning combined for 13 points. So something's going to change. And right now, where Chase pretty much had 2 stinkers, and obviously not all his fault with Jake Browning in there. He's definitely a player to go out there and buy this week. And the final player, McConkey of the Los Angeles Chargers. So a lot of people think he might be the 3rd wheel in this receiving room now is McConkey. In the last 2 weeks has definitely showed with non-production for McConkey. So the last few weeks, week 2 with Vegas, 5 for 48. Week 3 versus Denver, 4 for 41. And then week 4 at the Giants, only 1 catch for 11 yards on 6 targets. So Quentin Johnson's looked like the best receiver this season in the receiving room behind, with Keenan Allen behind him over there in Los Angeles. But it's nothing like McConkey lost a step or anything like that because the targets are still there for McConkey. In the last 3 games, he's got 18 targets, so that's still a solid number. But obviously last season, he was the only guy over there where Johnson got off to a decent start. Then he didn't do much and was banged up as well. And they didn't have Keenan Allen, where he returned this offseason in free agency after they traded him to the Bears. So I know those factors have definitely done McConkey in, but he's too talented as a wide receiver. And now with a banged-up offensive line, I think we're going to see some quicker routes for that football to get out of the hands of Justin Herbert. And we know McConkey, he could run routes. He's a good possession in hands wide receiver, and I think the numbers could get better from here. And in week 5, in a potential high-scoring game versus the Commanders, 7th most points to receivers on the season, I think McConkey could get going this week. He's definitely someone to buy this week, where obviously a lot of people think Allen and Johnson will be over him in the offense. That's a few plays I look to buy and trade for week 5 of the fantasy football season.